You're up.
Welcome, everybody. This is Jeff Watson and Christine Walker from Western University. We're happy to be here. We're proud to participate in Global Power Fit Day 2021. Our presentation is Understanding the Importance of Rotational Training. Why leave so much potential untapped? And so we're not going to leave any untapped. So here we go. We're going to try and give you a little quick background, and we're going to get into the slides that show kind of some interesting progressions on how to add rotational or anti-rotational training into your workout program. All right, here we go. So usually the bedrocks of any kind of strength conditioning program kind of revolve around the movement patterns that we naturally have. And so over the years, it's kind of become kind of a common big rock thing that we've got these 7 movement patterns: squatting, hinging at your hips, lunge or a stride pattern, horizontal pull, a horizontal push, a vertical pull, a vertical push. Now, if you look at our anatomy of our body, you think, okay, these things are all happening in a vertical fashion. Like you squat, you go up and down, you hinge, you bend forward, you come back up, etc. Except it's not really what's happening. You know, your shoulders and your hips are ball and socket joints, which means things are happening rotationally, right? Our body is put together with these muscles and fascia and these slings that come from the backside between your shoulders, around your torso, down into the opposite hip and down into the ground. And they exist on the front and back. So what it's become now is called the anterior posterior Seraphi APS system. And as you can see there, I'll let you read that. We incorporate many of these movements or the anti-rotational drills to help improve the quality of basically generating and transmitting force and torque between our upper and lower bodies, between our arms and our legs. And you can see by the movements that happen, you know, we've got punching, we've got sprinting, throwing, hitting, kicking, stair climbing, chopping wood, and even single-sided lifts and carries. Well, hey, that's a lot of stuff right there. So what I'm saying is you've got to add rotational elements on purpose into your training to maximize your potential to transmit force and create torque across the contralateral extremities. Okay, so that is what the anterior posterior Seraphi system is. Serape is a type of cloth, and it became known and worn by Mexican men. I'm not sure how that got in there, but historically, that's what the research says. But it kind of basically makes you think that you're being wrapped by a shawl or a blanket around your shoulders and down into the opposite hips. And then it's taken even further because it goes past your hip into your adductors, down into your gastrocs, your soleus. So if you can imagine these spiraling diagonal lines of muscle that are not all connected to each other directly, but they are sharing myofascial connections and the tendons and the ligaments. So it's this kind of interesting, very cool diagonal rotational thing that's going on in your body that we are going to look at today. All right, moving on. So in anything, we always want to reflect the fact that we want to have quality, we want to have safety when we train, and we try and make all of our movements kind of head towards a higher standard of movement. The first one is that your spine has to stay stable. So if you're going to squat with a bar on your back, you better be able to keep your head, your thoracic spine, and your pelvis in a line and rigid. It can't be wobbling. It can't be flexing, it can't be overarching or extending. So we need good spinal stability. Standard number 2, you have to load, right, your prime movers in the correct order. So if you're going to do a push up, for example, your shoulders must be loaded first, and then your elbows can flex and bend. But if your elbows flare out to the side first and your shoulders aren't loaded, it's going to make you have a very bad, ugly looking push up. So just remember you're in the push up plank position. You want to create some external rotation at your hands, which will help your humerus rotate externally in your shoulder capsule. And if you do that, your elbow joint will be facing forwards, and then your shoulders can just fall over that fixed elbow. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just have a couple partners when you're able to, out of this COVID times, block your elbows so your forearm is vertical, and that'll make your shoulders fall right into a perfect push-up. Okay. The other example is a squat with your feet sort of set facing straight ahead, maybe a slight turnout, 5-8 degrees, so you don't lose the torque in your hips. When you squat first, you want to hinge your hips slightly so they're loaded, because those are the prime movers when you squat. Then things will be well. Things will be great, as a matter of fact. But if your knees travel forward first and your back isn't loaded, then all of a sudden you start flexing your spine. That is a recipe for disaster. The third movement standard we like to look at is kind of a combination of what happens by doing the first two. But again, I already talked about it a little bit. If you have external rotation at your shoulder joint in a push-up, that will allow you to flex at the elbow. And if you have external rotation at your hip when you're about to squat, then you're going to have your hips loaded, and then your knees will not travel forward first, right? So you've loaded the hips, you've got torque at your hip joint, and that will allow you to descend into the squat. And at the same time, once your hips are loaded, then your knees can travel forward. They can go out over your toes, because most people are not going to be doing a powerlifting squat. They're not going to be like geared up in a super suit. But anyways, these are the movement standards. I just want you to remind you that they're out there. They exist. They'll help move your, like if you have a phys ed class, if you can take all the kids in your class and make them better movers and have better movement standards, you'll have great success. All right, next slide. One of the things that's overlooked in a lot of these movements I'm going to show you today is the fact that you have to dorsiflex your ankles. You got to pull your toes up. And you're like, why is this important? And why is it undercoached? What's the big deal? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's going to help you promote some very great strict mechanics. It's going to create full body tension, and it's going to help you, of course, what's the point? Is you're going to be able to follow movement standard number 1, having spinal stability and rigidity. And then from there, it's kind of like a cascade of good stuff. Now, by pulling your toes up, your gastrocs will get a little stretch. Your hamstrings and glutes get stretched, which means they get elongated, which is a good thing. It's going to reinforce the natural arch of your whole spine. It's going to elongate your spine. It's going to help you have better pelvic tilt and maintain it, especially when you start to do some of the exercises we show you on the upcoming slides. Because if your pelvis can't tilt, then there's a lot of things that won't be possible. And it's going to enhance your hinge mechanics. Again, when you go to squat or you do an RDL and you have to bend. The other thing is, what you may not think is, if you're doing like a body weight dip, you need, believe it or not, to pull your toes up. And, as you get into it, I could load your toes to make you dorsiflex by putting a bar on them, by putting 2 little kettlebells on them, and have you pull up as hard as you can, because this would enhance that hinge that's going to have to happen. Like if you think oh, I should look like a bent over row when I'm doing a body weight dip, that's exactly what I'm talking about. By lengthening out everything in your lower body, you're going to create more stiffness and have your lats and upper back contract harder, which will help stabilize your shoulder when you go to do that dip. So that's how these things kind of all go together in a bit of a nutshell. The last little thing is, hey, if you can increase your motor unit recruitment from head to toe, you will also maximize your force production. Okay, so great little things. Make sure you're thinking about dorsiflexion. I'll remind you of it when we hit the slides, and away we go. Now, I love starting on the floor because, you can't screw up too much on the floor. So we start with a dead bug exercise. The key focus here is we're going to use, you can use the contralateral knee drive, which means sprinting mechanics. This is how we sprint. Okay. So you think about that. If your right knee is up and it's flexed and it's bent at 90 degrees at your hip, then your other leg is probably going to straighten or just about to be fully straightened when your foot hits the ground. So we can practice running mechanics through all of these exercise progressions. The other thing that happens is, right, we're going to make sure we've got great pelvic tilt and all the muscles in your body are totally on. It's not, there's no energy leaks is really what I'm trying to tell you. All right, so the first exercise is a dead bug with a crossbody isometric. This is Elliot Beamer. If you watch, she's got the knees bent and away he goes. His toes are dorsiflexed and he's creating tension between that medicine ball and his upper and lower body. And just the fact that he is moving like this in this diagonal contralateral pattern, this is activating all of those muscles in the anterior and posterior Seraphi system. Okay, moving on to the next slide. We've got Nick Van in here. He's demonstrating the dead bug, but we put a 13-inch band around his feet. He's still got the contralateral knee drive and the arm motion, and it's just a nice variation, but we are changing the challenge a little bit. We're making it a little harder. Next exercise. Elliot is back and he's got the band around his feet, which is right, the contralateral knee drive. And what you can't totally see is that band is being pulled back. So Elliot is trying to hold that kind of end or the top of the horizontal push position, but it's really trying to create rotation. It's trying to pull him back into a pullover, but he's doing a great job of fighting it. His pelvis is locked in. So that is a great thing, right? Now, I could add dumbbells or kettlebells to that exercise to make it a floor press. You could add 2 dumbbells and do a pullover with that. The next exercise you're going to see as we slide the progression is the hollow body. So this is a tougher position than you would think. Here, Elliot's doing a great job. The toes are dorsiflexed. The hip flexors and abs are on. His whole body is moving together as a unit. Right now, you might, as you would first teach this, you might have the person just start like they're going to try and touch their toes, and then have them move apart until they can't control their body, like in 3 inches. So their arms and legs would move 3 inches apart at the top. And then if they could hold that, they would move another 3. And then you just keep prying them apart until they would end up looking like Elliot in his hollow body rocker exercise there. Another one we didn't show you is just an anchored reverse crunch. So if we put Elliot in the 90-90 position and we had him holding like a 60-pound kettlebell behind his head, he would try and do a reverse crunch and pull his body up, maintaining that, one leg at 90 degrees at the hip and knee, and the other leg, in that contralateral pattern. which would be a tough exercise. All right, so those are some variations of the dead bug. We're starting on the floor, we're getting your mechanics locked in, and then we're going to move you to the next slide. And the next slide is, hey, we're going to try and get you off the ground. So we're looking at the front plank and how can we add rotational things or anti-rotational things to it. The first thing is we're going to start you with the forearm plank. So you can see Elliot's doing a great job. Look at his foot position. The bottom of his feet are perpendicular to the ground. His hip flexors are on. His abdominals are firing. And the cue we don't use is squeeze your glutes, Elliot, because that would disengage his hip flexors and he would just drop right to the ground. Now, if you look at again as the video plays, you can see Elliot's got his elbows and he's trying to pull his elbows to his toes. So he's doing a crunch, a total body crunch. And his eyes are down, his shoulders are protracted, and he's got that plate on his low back. So that is a progression off the forearm plank. If you can do the forearm plank for 15 seconds, then we could start to load you. Nick Vannon is going to demonstrate the straight arm. In fact, he's going to do a straight arm variation that we're going to turn into the bird dog with band resistance around his feet. So once you're capable of doing the forearm plank, we're moving you up into the bird dog with a straight arm, and we added a little band resistance. So again, you just want to master each level, and I'm not trying to hold anybody back, is once you've got your mechanics locked in, we'll move you down the progression. After the bird dog, we could add the bear plank, and we could do a bear plank bird dog combo if you wanted to mash up your animals, right? So that's a very tough exercise. And then once we felt good about those 4 positions, then we might start you with a little instability, both for your upper body and your lower body. So you can see this is Nate Lazda. He was a former intern. He's working with Special Forces now. He's got his forearms on a foam roller. If you don't have a foam roller, you could use a PVC plank or whatever you can find. But same thing, his feet, right? The bottom of his feet are perpendicular. His hip flexors are firing. His abs are on. His shoulders are protracted and his eyes are looking straight down at the ground. The next one, we're going to add a little instability to his lower body. His feet are on the, like I call them, exercise sliders or gliders. If you had a slide board like the hockey guys slide across, you could just put some socks on. If you just have a slippery floor, if you got a plank floor, you can just put some towels down or socks and away you go. So you don't need a lot of equipment. And again, in COVID, you may not have access to your regular gym facilities and you might have to improvise. Okay, so that's the front plank. We just moved you off the ground. Now we're sliding into the next slide. And now we're going to challenge you. We're going to add a little more rotation to you with a single arm plank. So on the far left, we've got Nate Lazda, and he's demonstrating the elevated, right? His leg is elevated, is on his forearm, and he's going to lift the top leg. So both of his glute mediuses are working, right? Your external obliques are firing because you don't want to sag. So you're fighting, you're fighting anti-extension. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. So Nate's doing a great job. That's a great demonstration. To make that harder, we could load it. His top hand, we could put a dumbbell or a kettlebell, or I could put a landmine in there. It just all kinds of craziness. But it always starts with, solid fundamentals and the base position. The other thing is we're training those muscles of his hips that may not get enough attention. And they might come back to bite you because again, these muscles wrap around your body. So between your shoulder blades, into your obliques, into your internal obliques, into your adductors, right? That's how these slings work. Okay, so we're moving on. Nick is going to do the same single arm plank. He's abducted. He's on a kettlebell if you can't see it. and that kettlebell is wobbling a little bit, we could have put him on a foam roller, a Bozu ball. We could have him like have a resistance band slung through the safeties of a rack, which is pretty interesting to do. We could put his hand in a ring, like an Olympic ring, or we could put it in a TRX. So, and again, we could have those same possibilities for both introducing upper body instability and lower body instability. And you can see Nick is working hard here. He's on a little wee 4-inch foam roller and his leg is on that thing. And so he is working hard and he's trying to lock everything in because, like I said, there are lots of rotational elements there or anti-rotational elements. But again, that's a challenge. So we're just trying to challenge the body to fight rotation, to create torque, to stabilize, to stop motion, or to transmit motion. If you had a slide board and your feet were on it and you're doing a single arm plank, what is different about the slide board is that it's trying to lengthen you out. It's always trying to elongate you because your feet are sliding away from you. So you would have to pull your body in to hold it there. And so that's why it's got its own little box up top. I don't have a video of that one, unfortunately, but you could try that. It's wicked hard. And then the last one is I put this one in because again, just like your glute medius, your adductor grouping doesn't get enough work either. And so once you start into return to play, or we come out of the lockdown and COVID and people start to get more active, these little muscles that if they haven't been trained are where you're going to get these strains and tears. So we have challenged Nate here. He's in a forearm plank. The top leg, you'll notice, is over the top of the bench to allow for internal rotation because your adductors come below your knee joint line. So if you just put your foot flat on the bench, you could start to create knee pain. But this is allowing him to do internal rotation in his whole leg, and the adductor group is firing like crazy. And you're saying, well, why is that a big deal? Well, this exercise is key because your adductors are responsible for doing a lot of work. They act on your hip the longest when you're rising out of the bottom of a squat or you're jumping, doing a standing broad jump or you're doing a vertical jump. Those muscles are acting on your hip to create hip flexion. No, hip extension, right? Which is all about sports. Your hips are extending, you're projecting your body all over the field. So you got to train your adductors. All right. So those are challenges of the single arm plank. Everybody's favorite now, horizontal chest press, one arm or two arm with rotation. So we're adding a foam roller. Nate is on it. He's got his head off so I can get a sneaky little bit of neck training there. So he is elongating those neck flexors, and that's great because I get a little neck training. The foam roller is allowing for thoracic spine to open and rotate, and he's probably feeling his pecs and his triceps while maintaining a nice 90 degrees. So you see that he's coming down like 1, 2, 3. He's using a great tempo. He's going to pause and push back up. Now, once you've got that mastered, right, because you could just lay on a bench and do a one arm, horizontal press with a dumbbell, and you've got to fight rotation there. The foam roller is kicking it up a notch. And then if you've mastered that, flip over and try a single arm push-up. Man, like your whole body is rotating. You got to fight like crazy with those anti-rotators. All the muscles of those anterior and posterior slings we've been talking about are firing. Now, another interesting variation. Nate again is on the bench. We've turned it like sideways, so it's like a T, and he's doing a single leg glute bridge. So we're getting a little glute work in there, and he's doing a double arm press. Now, we could bend that straight leg to a 90-degree position so it looks like he's about to sprint, and he would get that contralateral knee drive, and we could actually hook a mini band around both knees there, and we could really, up the ante on that exercise. Next, Nick Vannon, one of our former athletes, soon to be Dr. Vannon, is on the floor and he's lengthwise and he's doing a single arm kettlebell press and he's fighting rotation. But you'll notice the toes are dorsiflex like a champ. That means his hip flexors and abs are keeping his pelvis in the correct position. Awesome job. Now, if you took that exercise that Nick's doing there on the floor and you put him on the end of the bench, so exactly kind of 90 degrees from where Nate was in the T-bench setup, you can see how that gets harder and less stable because now the bench can't stop his motion. When Nate was pressing, the bench would stop it. If you put Nick on the end of the, the longitudinal way on the bench, then he's going to have to control his range of motion a little harder and he'd have to fight. So we could put Nick and we could ramp that up with a contralateral knee drive and a mini band. And again, wow, tough stuff. Going to the right side. Now we've got Nate again. I've elevated Nate between two benches and he's doing a dumbbell chest press. And in order to stay there, he's got to do what, sports fans? He's got to fire everything on the backside of his body so he doesn't sag because he's trying to fight gravity. So that's just another interesting variation to add a little anti-rotation or anti-extension into your training world. Okay, we're moving on. Now we've got a horizontal row, and we're going to use the Renegade offset dumbbell one-arm row setup. Easier is if you start with your arms straight. So Nate's going to give you a demonstration of that. The next harder thing is you drop him down to his forearm. So his arm is bent, and that would create another position that you're going to have to fight the anti-rotation. So he's, the one thing about his form is he's not over rowing. He's stopping at 90, and that's what we mean by offset. So you'll see a bit more on the next example when we bring it down to the floor. So we like everybody to master the incline straight arm plank and the forearm plank before you go to the floor. Now we're even skipping a box because Nate's going to demonstrate the bird dog. So, if you want to just do offset on the floor, you'd have both feet on the floor. You can tell Nate's doing a great job. He's fighting all that rotation. He's trying to control it through his torso. Again, his anterior and posterior slings are working hard to stop motion and transmit force. You'll also notice that he's moved the dumbbell in his right hand back about like 5 or 6 inches. So he creates, right? One of the things I don't like about Renegade rows when people do them sloppy and they look like they're just trying to like smash the ground with them. But you'll see that Nate has got control and it is a very sweet little movement pattern and it will challenge your whole body. Okay, what can we do to do it harder? Well, we could do the bird dog row on a bench. So if I had him on a bench and I let him use the long way, he would have lots of room, but I could also turn him so that he only has 10 inches of the top, if you can imagine that in your mind. So if I set him up on a regular bench that was lengthwise, you might have 4 feet of bench to work with. You'd still have your end foot off the bench over the end. But if I turned you 90 degrees, now you're on the narrow base, that would be tough. And if I added a mini band to your foot, whoa, there's a lot of work going on there. So as we're moving down to the right side, our next video shows you kind of like the end one. So we've got a bear plank bird dog thing going on. So he's in the bear position. He's got the dumbbell offset. And so his left arm and his right leg are working. And that's just a tough. This isn't the end. This is just a great place for you guys to start. So once you master these, hey, maybe come back or send us a shout on our wmustangs.sc@gmail.com and we'll send you some more challenges. Moving on, going to the next slide. We got vertical push, which is basically an overhead press. So you could just be seated and try a bottoms up kettlebell one arm press. If you've mastered the one arm dumbbell press, then bottoms up kettlebell is a great way to check and see if your movement pattern and your mechanics are perfect. Because if they're not, that kettlebell will just fall over. If you're trying to come too low, if your angle changes in between your forearm and your humerus, it'll just fall over. But it's a great way to fix things. The second is incline bottoms up kettlebell one arm press, and I've added the head off technique. So he's on a foam roller, which means you just can't just sit there and be lazy on the bench. It means that I'm making his lower body fire. His quads and his hips are firing, and he's got a pelvic tilt. His abs are on. His head is off. So I get a little of that neck work that I love, because that's going to lengthen your neck flexors, which are probably tight from watching all these Zoom presentations. So great kind of like progression right there. And he's got to fight all of that rotation that's going on in his body. Okay, so if we wanted to make that super hard, we could do the contralateral knee drive with the mini band, around your foot and over your knee. Tough, really tough. We've got Nick. He's going to demonstrate. The mini band is now, right? He's in contralateral knee drive. And he's trying to stay up and he's trying to fight. So he's got balance. He's vertical. He's got rotation. And he's trying to drive it up and over his head. Tough. So after you get one, you could go with two. And now he's taking it all the way to the end of what I'm going to show you here today. Is bottoms up. We got the contralateral knee drive with the mini band, and he's got the bottoms up. So he's got to control everything. His total body is locked in. So great job, great video there. So that's some variety you can put in with rotational elements to your vertical push. Okay, I know I'm running a little bit long, but I'm going to keep trucking through. Rotation and anti-rotation exercises. So you see the little note, tempo and accentuated eccentric and or isometric holds can be added to any of the exercises below. Okay, the Pallof Press. So we got Nick on the patio. We got a 41-inch band, and he's tall kneeling, and he's just trying to press. And you can see that band is working him hard. Like that is a heavy purple, like probably giving you 50, 65% or 65 pounds of resistance. So he's got to work hard to try and push that out straight. So it could be half kneeling, he could be tall kneeling, be split stance or lunge, or it could be standing. You could do any of these positions to increase your challenges, but you'll find it's tough when you're down on the tall kneeling. And then he's going to go overhead press. So he's got the half kneeling right there. And he's got that big band. Like I'm telling you, that's like 50 or 60 pounds. And you better believe that he's locked in, right? Like his hip flexors and his abs are working. And this is me on the driveway. I wanted to show you this one. So this is like two. This is easier bands because I'm older, and I'm just showing you the Pallof overhead press. Now, if you do this strict under control, you'll find that your obliques are working like crazy. Because again, the sling is between your shoulder blades, your rhomboids, and then it's wrapping around. So as we move on, I'm going to show you the next one. So I put myself in a lunge position and I'm going to pull it across. So rotational things happen in the transverse plane, not in just the sagittal or frontal. So yes. So you see, I'm taking it back in like a 4 count. I'm pausing. I could have more range of motion, but that's not what it's all about here. I'm trying to just show you tight and control, and then I'm trying to be explosive forwards. So that is kind of like a chop. That's exactly a chop. And I'm just kind of adding accentuated eccentric and some isometric holds. Okay. Next, everyone's probably got a plate or something heavy or a medicine ball. So Nick has got like the parallel stance, and he's just doing controlled isolateral swings. So he's kind of moving to his right and his left, just like a pendulum. He's putting a little pause at the top. You could also have that where your feet are starting to rotate. So I find a plate or a kettlebell works great for this. If you get into the swings, you might want to use the kettlebell. The next one here, he's going to go to a split stance. So obviously the split stance is a little more challenging. He's got a medicine ball because that was what was handy. Could have been a dumbbell, could have been a kettlebell, but he's just giving you a little pause at the top. And again, all of that is driving rotation through your whole system. You could do chops and lifts. Now, last one on this slide that we'd show you, even though there's lots more, is kind of torso rotation. So I made Nate kind of stop at the top to show you that it's really a lift. He's kind of accelerating up to a lift. We could add a resistance band, kind of like if you can imagine around the sleeve there, just below his hands, tied off on a dumbbell to make that. We could do ab rollouts from a full plank because you've got a landmine. Now you could also do a ab roll up from a plank, or you could be at the end of the bar and you could do like, you'd be in the bear position and you're kind of doing like kind of some side to side. Your shoulders aren't really moving, but the bar is, and that's going to drive huge amounts of like, rotation through your core, and you have to fight the fact that you're just going to go flying. So there you have it. There's some rotation, anti-rotation exercise for you to try. Last but not least, we wanted to show you like a little example of a workout that will get some of this incorporated into your workout. Animal Flow, you can check it out on the internet. A guy by the name of Mike Fitch kind of came up with the whole thing. He was probably looking at a guy named Ido Portal. You can also look up that guy. He's fascinating. He just says, hey, why do we want to move? Because we can, because we're human, right? And so, you move like an animal to be human. And so we just use this very basic, simple animal flow workout as the warm up. So you're going to try these basic 6 exercises. And then if you add number 7 and 8, the side kick through or the front step, it just adds some variations on, a couple of the other positions. So you guys can read that. You could find that on the internet easily. The crab reach is basically just a posterior plank, and you're going to reach with your right and left, loading and unloading the beast. I kind of like his terminology there. He's basically in a push-up position and pushing back into a squat, then coming forward into the push-up position. So you're kind of loading and unloading the beast. The beast could be your hips. Side traveling ape is kind of like you're squatting and then you put your hands on the ground and your legs move to the left, and you might do 3 reps to the left. Oh, I know you will. And then you do 3 to the right. And forward traveling crab, you're back to the crab. You're just going to walk forwards. You're going to try and cover some distance until your form breaks down. Then you're going to stop. Forward traveling beast. It's kind of like, a bear crawl, but it could be any beast. So, I just don't want to say it's the bear crawl. It can be your favorite, traveling beast. The under switch is kind of a fun one, but again, all of that's easy to find on the internet. And try 1 or 2 sets. It's a great warm up. It's going to challenge you with rotation. It's going to challenge all of this musculature that is designed to transmit and stop motion and create force of all those movements are athletic. And then we're gonna put you into some actual, like, our primal rotation workout introduction. So you can read that, the standing med ball slam. So you're gonna pick up a slam ball. It'll be on your right side, you get up over of your head and you're going to get tall and then you're just going to hammer it, right? So as hard as you can, put the force into the ground. So I like using Dynamax balls so they won't come up and pop you in the face, or a slam ball is a great option. I kind of did the demonstration of the cable or band resistance, lunge position, eccentric isometric chops. And so you do 3 sets of 8 on each side, follow the tempo. I read the tempo like, hey, you're going to explode down. You're going to have a 1 count where you know, pause, breathe, and you're going to go back in 4, and you're going to breathe and hold for 1. If you follow that tempo, then, the rep range will be right. And like I said, it's more important to dial in your mechanics and then load it. The second one, 3 sets of 6 reps with tempo. We're going to do that T bench dumbbell chest press, but I'm going to put you in that contralateral knee drive position, which means it's basically like a single leg glute bridge, and you got the knee drive. So I get that hip flexion. So the way this system works is if I drive my knee up on my right side and my hip flexor is working, it's going to make the glute on my left side contract harder. And that's the beauty of this, anterior posterior Seraphi or anterior posterior sling system, is that, hey, so when you sprint, if you think about it, if you're going to rip your right arm up, that's going to help you drive your left elbow back. And like I said, it's all about propelling you down the field. So last but not least, there's our dumbbell offset Renegade rows. That's number B exercise in 2. And like I said, we showed you that, hey, you could do it. If you can do it from the floor, awesome, but you could take it back. You could do a regression to the forearm or the straight arm plank on the bench. Superset number 3, you've got the standing single leg plus the contralateral knee drive, add the mini band. So Nick gave you a demonstration of that. And you could either use 1 dumbbell or 2 dumbbells. But I said master 1 first and then move on to 2. And then if you got that mastered, hey, try bottoms up, knock yourself out. Last but not least, the complementary exercise to that is doing a pull-up with kind of, we call them sprinter pull-ups. And just again, imagine like your knee drive. So your one knee is going to be up and flexed and the other one's going to be back. And you just try pull-ups like that. And again, you're creating all kinds of rotation through your body and lots of challenges, as if the pull-ups aren't challenging enough. Okay, so I hope that that give you some ideas on how to include rotational training into your workouts. I thank you for your time and attention. If you got any emails, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Global Power Fit 2021. Thank you so much.